Welcome to everyone. My name is Malcolm Sweeting. I'm the Pro-Chancellor of the Open University, the Chair of the Open University, and I'm particularly delighted to be hosting today's event because in my former life I was a lawyer. And we are absolutely thrilled today to have the Attorney General with us, Victoria Prentis, together with Hugh Finnegan, who is Head of Paralegal at the Government Legal Department. And one of the questions I've got for you, Hugh, is the Government Legal Department is probably bigger than my old shop in terms of numbers of lawyers. So I'd be fascinated to just know the size and the scale of it at some point. So a very big, sorry, of course, Hugh McCall. In the 25th year anniversary of the law faculty, we have Hugh, who heads up the law school, who everyone here and everyone online will know. And Hugh will say a few words afterwards. But a very big welcome. We really appreciate the opportunity that our students have today. I'm sure they're going to find it really helpful and engaging. I'm told we've got 260 students online listening to this, and I will just remind the politician in the room that we actually have students in every single constituency in the UK and a number. And actually, Victoria managed to tell me there are 360 OU students in her constituency. So, so we are everywhere, and we're going to look today at career opportunities available for our law graduates in the Government Legal Department. So I think this is going to be really helpful, really useful. But as the OU, we are in our 54th year. Hugh will talk about the law school a bit later and where it is in its journey. 2.3 million students have been through our doors. At the moment, we have 200,000 students. We're the largest university in Europe because of our scale, our reach, and our depth and approach to open entry. We really are a beacon for social mobility, together with equality, equity, and diversity and inclusion. So on graduate days, we have these wonderful days when people finally succeed and get their degree. And I always ask our graduates, how many of you have a job? How many have caring responsibilities? How many bring up families? And I'd say close to 100%, but probably over 90% fall into that category. So the great thing about our students is that employers love them, and they love them for that reason. They've had to work incredibly hard. They've had to manage their time. They've had to be incredibly diligent, very committed. And they literally do burn the midnight oil to get their studies done at the same time as having lots of other responsibilities. And if there are students either in the room or listening virtually, then they will probably acknowledge that is their life. So I'm delighted because I'm a lawyer. My old shop has a number of contacts with the government and the Government Legal Department. First of all, they were a major client, so we're always very nice to them. And actually, the head of our government team, Andrew D, sorry about this, but we actually recruited him to the Government Legal Department. So I apologise, but he's doing an excellent job. And David Bixler, one of our Port London managing partners, is now a DG at what was Bays, but I'm not quite sure which bit of he is in now. So it's fascinating work in the Government Legal Department, and from our side we used to get involved in a number of judicial reviews, which we probably weren't thanked for, but lots of other really sort of from nuclear to the National Lottery to trade agreements, really fascinating, cutting edge, really important sort of policy work for the government. So we're really looking forward to today. It's going to be fascinating. I'm sure we're all going to be very interested in hearing what you've got to say, and again, thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you, Malcolm. So just a few words, if I may, about the Open University Law School. We're delighted to have you here with us today, Attorney General, and I was really pleased to learn that Hugh is also an Open University graduate. So for today only, it's the OQ. Just a few words about our 25-year milestone. So the Open University began in 1998 offering legal education as a genuinely open access option for students. So in 1998, we had 861 students on the roll. This year, we have 10 times that many, roughly. So we've got about 8,000 students. That gives you the sense of the scale at which we operate and the number of people we reach. We started off in a collaboration with the College of Law, and then our first in-house modules were developed in 2006. Our Masters of Law programme began in 2011, and then our full law degree developed by the Open University with a significant increase in research staff came in 2014. And another important milestone was 2017, the launch of the Open Justice Centre, which allows our students to put their hard-won legal skills and knowledge into good use in the community in pro bono legal education. So looking back, we've helped over 60,000 students achieve their professional and personal ambitions, which makes us the biggest law school in Europe. But we're generally open access, so we've got remarkable students, including the one, of course, sat next to me. But we've had students who study despite very difficult personal circumstances, students in prison, students with significant caring responsibilities, students with additional physical and mental needs. So we're really proud of being able to offer a law degree that is genuinely open to people, places, methods and ideas. So as well as opening up the access to the profession, and I think that's going to be a big theme of today's discussion about how our students, many of whom have joined online. So thank you to all of those who've made the effort to tune in. There's many hundreds of people tuning in today. They'll be interested in how their law degree can, with the Open University, can help them access the legal profession. And we've had some notable alumni. Some of them have gone on to work for the government legal department, and we were pleased to note that we think that the youngest ever judge was appointed, who was an OU graduate. He was 29 years old, in the Immigration Tribunal. So that was news that we got this year. So that is testament to the kind of quality of the students that we have. But as well as delivering access to the profession, the whole ethos of the Open University Law School is to help develop active and engaged citizens. That's the founding vision of our Professor Gary Slapper, who started the law school in 1998. So we do that through making sure our research is responsive to the needs of the public. So we do lots of research looking into the social needs, so violence against women, issues around migrants at sea, how technology is changing legal services in the legal profession. And some of my more romantic colleagues have been researching the law on weddings and shaping the
big issue.
It is a big issue. So our well-known collaboration with the BBC shows our ability to reach out to a wider audience beyond our students. And some of our recent programmes have been recommended for BAFTAs, including The Detectives, Women Who Changed Modern Scotland, and the very well received Parole. So it's been quite a 25 years. We're looking forward to the next 25 years, where we ensure our law school is genuinely open to people, places, methods and ideas. And what better way to celebrate than have the Attorney General and the team talk about the opportunities for our students to work with the government legal department. And it'd be a great way of marking that 25 years if some of the people on the call or in the room end up working with you in the future. So that's my hope. So a very warm welcome. And over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's really exciting to be here. I try to visit a university a month in this role, and this was very much top of the list of the places we've been trying to get to. I've been always very aware of the Open University. My mum taught, in fact, adult literacy, and her real success stories went on to graduate with the OU. And I've had friends over the years who started their career path very much here, well, probably at home in their bedroom, but via here. And I love the concept of lifelong learning. My grandmother was very involved in something called the University of the Third Age, which I think is something I'm looking forward to myself. So it's really exciting to be here. I wanted to start by saying what the AG, what the Attorney General does. I mean, I know you all know because you're very well educated university students, but I'll just tell you a bit about day-to-day life, if that's all right. And then I'll go on to talk very quickly about my own career and about the brilliant thing that is the government legal service department profession, however we want to describe it. So Attorney General is very much it's an extraordinary role. Many of my predecessors have hated it. In fact, some of them described it as a vision of hell, and they didn't like being unpopular. I have to break it to you as lawyers that you might often be unpopular because you are the thing that stands between your clients who have desires and needs and the rule of law. And you do quite often in your lives as lawyers have to say, nah, you can't do it like that. You might be able to say, you could do it possibly like this, or why don't we consider this alternative? But Malcolm will back me up. You do sometimes just have to say, no, that's not how it works. The law says this. So that is the role of the attorney, like any other in-house lawyer, as it were. I'm both. I'm not a member of the cabinet, but I do sit in the cabinet every week. And I'm a member of the government. and I'm still very, very much a lawyer. In fact, I'd say I was a lawyer before I was a politician in this role. So I get asked a whole gamut of things, which obviously, because of client confidentiality, like any other lawyer, I can't talk about in any detail. I'm not even allowed to tell you whether I've advised. So I might get very excited by marriage law, but obviously I can neither confirm nor deny whether I've ever given advice about that. So it's very much an in-house lawyer role. And it's my job to say, well, that doesn't really work, or this could work if we tweak things, or let's get some more advice about this and explore how it could work. And that is very much the role of really most lawyers. So we have an important role to uphold the rule of law. We scrutinise legislation that the government brings forward. And we also have a sort of supervisory role over the government's litigation, so cases before the courts. In my career, I feel very lucky, prepared me very well for this. That's luck rather than anything else. I went down the traditional university route. I did English and early medieval languages because they're jolly useful. And then I did a shortened law degree at Cambridge because I'd already got a degree from London. So I did a 2-year degree. Weirdly, it was cheaper and I got a scholarship, but these things are slightly peculiar. And at Cambridge, I realised very quickly that I loved constitutional law and administrative law, and to a lesser extent, international law. And other things didn't really float my boat, but those definitely did. And I ended up writing a passionate defence in a long essay of the scrutiny role of the House of Lords. Sometimes I think about that late at night when I'm waiting for the Lords to vote down on our legislation. I think, really? But I do actually think it works, weirdly. So I loved all that. I then I couldn't decide whether to become a solicitor or a barrister. Really hard decision. I loved elements of both. And it's interesting, I'm the leader of the bar now. I very much am a barrister, but I love the fact that during my career I have been able to work with the best bits of both professions. So I did pupillage at the bar in the end, slightly inspired by Rumpole, I think, on the telly, which was the thing to watch in my childhood. No other lawyers in my family. We were farmers and teachers. I thought Rumpole was the business, though, and I was very excited by the idea of the law changing and moving things forward. So became a barrister, and during my pupillage, I remember vividly sitting in chambers with my pupil master, and he was doing a lot of health and safety work, which may not sound terribly gripping. But these people came in from what I now know to be the government legal department, and they were really thinking about the way that the law would move, and you could change the law and how you could go to the court and get a judgment on a new point of law. And it was about a ferry disaster that had happened at that time when people had been very badly injured and some had died. So it was quite important, actually. And I remember saying to my pupil master after this is amazing. Why did nobody tell me that you could do law and politics and all at once in this place called the government legal department? And these people are working with ministers. They're also working with judges. They're looking at the way the law is constantly changing. Our common law, as you know, really continues to evolve, and this is just so exciting. So there was clearly no way back for me from that moment onwards. I applied to join the government legal department, and I eventually, it took a long time, it often does if you apply to join us, I'm sorry to say, but hang in there. I got a job in the judicial review team. So I was called in 95. I got my job in 97. So this was quite at the beginnings of judicial review. We have probably fewer than 500 cases a year across government. It was a new and emerging way of practicing law, really. And then I joined as a legal officer, which is just up from a trainee. Definitely below. I bet it's lower than you joined, and I stayed in that team, very unusually for the government legal department, all my career for 17 years until I left because the previous MP for Banbury had resigned. I had been enabled through flexible working to do lots of charity work locally. I'm very involved with my local hospital trust and so on. And it seemed that the moment had come to put my name forward to be the MP for Banbury. So I was very lucky to be elected in 2015. Leaving work was hell. I really hated that. I hated leaving my job share, who I was very fond of. She and I had both ended up working full time, but we still job shared because we found it was a really useful way of working. Both of us on our non-working days, we pretended we were looking after the children, but in fact we were running major charities. She was as a volunteer running maternity services for London. I was doing this gig with the local hospital trust and various other, in fact, lots of other charities. And it enabled us to get many skills and experiences that were not entirely available to us at work. The children sort of dragged themselves up along the way. So I loved my old job, I really did. So arriving in Parliament, I looked around me and thought, oh, crikey, there aren't as many lawyers here as I thought. 13%, but very few had practiced for as long as me, actually. And very few had done any drafting. And of course, what we do in Parliament is make law. So it was quite useful. So I spent 3.5 years on the Justice Select Committee, which I loved. It enabled me to investigate and write reports on my real passion in life, which is prison reform. And I also was able to do various government jobs, first as the PPS for Andrea Leadsom, who was the leader of the House during those awful Brexit years. So lots of drafting involved then. And then as a minister in DEFRA, as I said, my family farm. So I was always aware of farming and how important it is. So that very much used my skills, not least because it was a very legal role. I took through the Agriculture Act and Fisheries Act and about 150 statutory instruments. I mean, ministers do manage it as non-lawyers, but frankly, I think it would be quite hard work. It was quite hard work anyway. We also, the astute among you will have noticed, had COVID during that time, and being food minister during the early part of COVID was an extraordinary privilege, but extremely, extremely difficult. We didn't run out of food, and we worked jolly hard. We got rid of things like competition laws between supermarkets, driver's hours we had to waive for a bit just to make sure that we really didn't run out of food, and we all got it, what we needed, which was an experience. So then, after a brief stint in Department of Work and Pensions, I became Attorney General, which very much enables me to draw on all these previous experiences. It's still broadly admin law, thank goodness. That's what I know about. That's what I've always done. With bits of international law. It's leading the department in which I've spent nearly all of my career. So I know a lot of the personnel and I very much respect their abilities and what they do. And it also enables the political bit of me to understand where law butts up against political wish, desire, acceptability. So it's where I think the most exciting part of law is, if I'm honest. So government legal department, I would really encourage you all to apply. We are properly diverse. We really are. It's one of the few places in my life I've worked where I don't think anybody judges you. You are valued for what you are. 10% of the senior staff are registered, well, I don't know if they're registered, but they certainly say they feel disabled, for example. Our stats on ethnic diversity are pretty good. Our stats on women are extraordinarily good. We're led by the Treasury Solicitor, who is a woman, with a senior leadership team beneath her, in which women are slightly over, well, in fact, more than slightly, very overrepresented. We championed flexible working before it was a thing. And though I have to say that's changed a lot in my lifetime, I was the first person to work part-time in litigation. And but we mean it, and we will continue to evolve to make sure that we get the really bright, really excited and enthusiastic and public service facing lawyers that we need. So if you think you are they, then for goodness sake, apply. Go on.
Hi everyone. So yeah, I'm Keith Migan. I'm the head of the paralegal profession and outreach within the government legal department. Thank you very much for having me here today. I realise I know you're a graduate, although not in law. It is brilliant to be able to come and speak to current students about the opportunities that GLD offers. My role itself sits within the wider early talent programme, which is a programme that hopefully is going to see as many OU graduates as possible applying for roles in GLD. The programme itself is split into 3 strands as we look to diversify routes into the legal profession. We've got our award-winning flagship legal training scheme, which has been running for a number of years and is hugely popular. We've got our apprenticeship strand. We've just launched 2 legal apprenticeships within GLD. They provide opportunities to qualify by the SQE route whilst working as a paralegal within GLD and gaining qualifying work experience as well. The third work strand is probably the one that I'm most invested in as head of paralegals, is our paralegals. And we're looking to develop a profession within itself within GLD, creating clear routes into the profession, career pathways to qualify as lawyers for those who want to, and development opportunities for people who want to pursue a career as a paralegal, looking ahead to implementing AI and legal tech and legal project management in the future, which is all very exciting. My career, I was in the CPS for a number of years, running their legal training scheme there as well, and developing a program called Prosecutor Pathways. And I was attracted, so I joined GLD 7 months ago, and everything that the attorney mentioned in terms of inclusivity, diversity, is what attracts me across, and the investment that we're putting into our early talent program. So I'm happy to take any specific questions and due calls around routes into the profession.
Thank you, Hugh. So that's my cue. This speaking arrangement is quite interesting. Panel of lawyers, room full of lawyers. I feel like I'm in the witness box. But I'm good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jemima Johnson. I'm Chief of Staff to the Vice Chancellor, who sends his regards. It's fixing a few other things at the university at the moment. I've got a set of pre-submitted questions that I'll kind of run through and probably aim them at both of you. Sure. But if Malcolm and Hugh, you have something burning you wish to add, please do. So quite a lot of the pre-submitted questions are quite interested in the choices that you've made and the experiences that you've had. So I'll do like rapid fire. Okay, even that's fine. So most challenging aspect of your role.
Oh, well, saying no. So, but that, all lawyers say that. It's not unique to me at all, though, of course, the stakes are a bit higher. So if something is not lawful, however much the Prime Minister or another minister wants to do it, I have to say no, and they have to listen to me.
I have to stick to the script, so I cannot veer off and ask other questions, much as I want to. Best part of your job?
As a litigator, I would say winning, but it isn't really. I mean, it is sometimes. It is a lovely feeling. I think moving the law forwards and genuinely working out how we need to change things. I am disproportionately proud of the Agriculture Act, which enables us to pay subsidy effectively to farmers for doing more environmental practices. So so to have written that law, and lawyers did write that law, government lawyers wrote that law, and to have taken it through Parliament, got people to vote for it, actually got the policy to work with other very clever civil servants making that happen, feels very good.
Worst part of your job?
It's when you know that the government really wants to do something, or the nation really wants to do something, or the political feeling really wants to do something, and they just can't because it's not lawful.
Career highlight?
Oh, so many. A lot of public inquiries. They were satisfying. Horrible, very stressing. I did a lot of inquests. I specialised in Article 2 of the Human Rights Act for many, many years. So my cases often weren't very happy ones because somebody died. But it was satisfying being able to see justice done, really, often, and still is.
What keeps you up at night?
Worrying about yeah, it always has been worrying about cases and how they're going to go. It hasn't changed much. The pressures in the AG role are not very different from the pressures that a junior government lawyer faces. They're just more impactful, if you like. But junior government lawyers, the government does have extra duties. Lawyers all have duties, and that's really important. And any lawyer will feel ethically challenged at times. Government has extra duties if you use candor, for example. And junior lawyers, who are often the ones responsible for disclosure, which is the hardest thing in the world to do, will often think, well, should I give that bit of paper? Is that bit of paper A, relevant, B, important, C, against my case? You know, and they have to weigh up so many different decisions on a real minute by minute basis. That is what makes it fun and exciting, but it's also what makes it really difficult.
Thank you. I think I'd probably pose this to everybody here, since we do have a little bit of time. How did your studies assist you with the job you do? Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. I'm in a bit of a quandary at the moment about how university prepares you for life. Well, I've got a child who just has failed to graduate because they marked her exams. Not from this university, I hasten to add. And she's a language student like me. She likes languages, and she did a 4-year degree, but 1 year out in the community, in fact in Ukraine for a lot of the time, and she learnt an awful lot more during her year away from university than she learnt during her 3 years at university. She literally had to cope with the outbreak of war, and then thereafter bringing over friends and colleagues who she'd met in Ukraine who now live with us, not all in Banbury, but all over the country. And yes, her university was important, and learning grammar is important, and reading literature is important, and I'm sure her teachers helped her. But I think the unique thing that you do here of meshing real life with academic work is particularly valuable. I really do. I had a very good time at university. I am still in touch with one of my tutors, and I went to the funeral of a very dear man who taught me quite recently, so we remained in touch for the rest of his life. I do, however, feel though as a lawyer you grow a bit later, and the people who trained me are a really big deal. Still, I saw one of them yesterday. He's now the Lord Chief Justice. I saw one of them last weekend. He's Dominic Grieve, who was the attorney, and we are in constant touch. And they were my 2 pupil masters, and I also had a mentor who I'm very close to. He's now in the House of Lords. Those people who shaped the early part of your career, and I really tried to do this as a trainer of other people, are the ones I suspect that mould your values and your ethics and the rest of it. So I think, well, as you all know, learning is not just about university.
Lifelong learning. And on that note, Hugh, student Hugh.
So my studies, I think, really helped me in my current role. Being studying at the OU, I worked full time alongside my degree, as I imagine many people here are as well. That really helps with in terms of time management, organisational skills, everything you learn from juggling the job and studies. And in particular, my current role, it's really helps with introducing the apprenticeships. Because as part of the apprenticeships, people will be working as a full-time job, GLD, but they'll be studying alongside that as well. They'll receive the 20% of the job allowance, but they're studying in their own time as well. It's going to help me build that programme and make sure I support for its passion. Develop successfully.
Malcolm?
Interest. I'll speak a little bit as an employer, because at my old firm, we used to sort of take the view that actually the 3 years spent at university wasn't, not for the OU graduates, but for most of the graduates who do come into the profession, probably wasn't that useful to us as a firm. And so we instituted a first of all, the law firms got together and created their own courses, which were much more practical. And then as you come into the law firms to train, there was a huge amount of thought and effort put into actually how we got people to where they were, to where we needed them to be. And there's a huge investment in that, huge investment. And I think there's a big difference between the law, which is what we learn at university, and actually how you apply the law, which is really important to your clients. And that's going back to it's actually, I think that, and you make some huge friendships, both with the people who are mentoring, teaching you, but also the people who you're coming through with. So if I look back, actually, some of my sort of strongest relationships come from, you know, those first 5 years at a law firm, those people who were guiding my career, but also those people like me who are having their careers guided. And I do think, and I think the OU is very good at this, but I do think there's a lot that universities need to do to make sure their curriculum keeps pace with what's happening in the world. Because I quite often look at law degrees, and they're pretty much teaching, you know, with a few new cases and a few new statutes, what I learned at university. And you know, when you go into a law firm, that is really not what you're doing.
Thank you, Malcolm. Hugh, really.
Yeah, well, looking back, I mean, I didn't say it, but my degree in law was with the Open University. So I learned about law through the Open University. I think for me, what that gave me in terms of my current role is, I think fundamentally the word would be a sense of humility. And what I mean by that is, I was struck when studying law about the vastness of the subject. You know, sometimes people feel they need to get a grip of everything, but the skill that you need to develop, and I think we really encourage our students to develop, is that ability to be able to know where to look, how to digest information, how to apply it in a way that is relevant to clients and to the current situation. So it's that ability to know where to look, what to prioritize, I think is very important. But for me, having been a student, having worked and studied with the Open University, it's really given me a very good strong insight into how our students approach this degree. And I've also, you know, learned to be careful who you tell that you're studying law, because sometimes a loose conversation can have you're asked, suddenly there's a queue of people asking for legal advice.
Yeah,
so I'm sure
it's always about divorce, and I just don't know with the answer.
Nor do I.
actually teaching family law when I realised the position I'd be in.
Ask him.
Yeah.
I'll be in queue.
Yeah.
That we've been there, done that already. Victoria, what would be the one thing you would advise our students that you wish you were advised?
Well, I wish somebody had given me this talk at university, because then I would have applied straight to the GLD. So that's one very practical thing. I think the main thing is to keep saying what you want and need at work, because you are a valuable resource. You've been well educated. It's a tight employment market at the moment. And if you want to work within reason in a particular way, or on particular issues, then say so. I do think enthusiasm gets you a very long way in the early part of your career. So just be honest about how much you love it.
And on a similar theme, there is a specific question about having chosen government as the right path. How did you know it was the right path, and could you help students think about that as a choice?
Well, it very much depends on your attitude to public service, I think. And if you are one of those people for whom public service is something that makes you want to get up in the morning, then we might well be the right legal outlet for your skills. Lots of lawyers do lots of good work, definitely across the legal spectrum. But if you really want to deliver things through an organised state system, that sort of prism in the legal profession, then definitely give us a look. And of course, it's not just GLD. We've got CPS lawyers recruiting very heavily, really exciting roles. You're able to do advocacy in extraordinary quantities, but lots of responsibility at a very young age. I'm always amazed if you're a serious advocate and somebody who really wants to be Rumpole, then the place to do that, obviously not for the defence, is in the CPS. So that's where all the advocacy is happening. The Serious Fraud Office also recruiting really big cases. If you have any sort of technical bent, or you're you're motivated by a desire to get bad guys who con old ladies, then that might be the place for you. And we really can offer a wide spectrum.
Can I ask Hugh a question?
Yes.
Which is really to answer one of my original, which is just give us a sense of the scale, the size of the government legal department, because I think that will be really fascinating to you. I mean, with SFO, CPS, you're, but actually there's a lot of transactional work going on.
Yeah, there is.
So just give us a size of the scale of the government legal department.
Yeah, so we've just reached over 3,000 employees in the government legal department, and over 2,000 of them are lawyers. So we've got a huge numbers of lawyers.
So you're
Plus
the biggest,
CPS, plus SFO.
okay.
Yeah.
So you're the biggest law firm or
we are.
legal provider in the UK by some distance.
We are by a long way.
And I think what struck me more from joining CPS to GLD was not just the breadth of work that our employees undertake.
Yeah.
It's just
everything.
vast. It's
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
And increasingly, we're desperate for trade lawyers. So we're signing all these. If anybody wants to self-identify as a trade lawyer, well, it's a really emerging area of work generally across the board. We're doing all these trade deals with other places. All these laws have to be written. They have to be negotiated, and we really like those. So these days, most international law in government is not done in the Foreign Office. It's done in other departments. So yeah, there's something for everybody, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Hugh, you wanted to.
Yeah, I was just interested because you mentioned, Hugh, before about artificial intelligence. I think a lot of students online in the room, when they come to get job interviews, that's the question they're going to get asked. How might artificial intelligence change legal services or legal practice? So to give them a leg up, what answer would you give to such an interview question?
Well, it's probably a question I'm asking myself at the moment. But in the paralegal sphere, we're looking at legal technology and AI that can assist with kind of drafting and reading of legal documents. Not to replace paralegals in any sense, but to assist paralegals in how the work is done. So I think that's the biggest change at the moment in the community, but there's a lot more to come.
We're quite excited by AI, and we might give the impression of being old-fashioned and fuddy-duddy and free-ish, but actually we've got an AI champion in each part of the office, and we're quite serious about how we use it. From a litigation point of view, if something is on a computer or created by a computer, it blooming well needs to be searched by a computer because it's killing us doing it by people. So there's real gains there. We have really good disclosure tools already, but those can definitely be much better and more sophisticated. And we're working on those all the time. We've got some really good firms in London who are doing that. But we in government are very interested in it too. Lawyers are quite relaxed about precedent. AI is often a different form of precedent. It does need to be checked, though. It's not there. It makes up case law at the moment. And we try quite hard not to make up case law. So we need to keep checking that. But it definitely, it will change the way we do things, but so is the internet, so have computers, so have mobile phones, which mean we have so much more data in every single case now than we used to have when I started. So I think we'll take it in our stride. I just hope as government we can be right at the front, but we are genuine about that, I think.
Yeah, certainly something that we're thinking a lot about in the Open University in terms of the way we develop materials
and
assess students and stuff. So it's an exciting time for us as well.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people on the call will be interested a bit more to understand the difference between kind of the paralegal work, in terms of the workload, their day-to-day working, and then some of the other roles that you have in the government legal department. So it'd be useful to expand on that a little bit, I think.
Yeah, so there's a lot of work going on at the moment in terms of bringing in consistency to our paralegal profession across GLD. As I mentioned before, our lawyers cover a huge area of breadth of work, legal work, and then so do our paralegals because they work closely with our lawyers. So it's about bringing in consistency between litigation, advisory, commercial, employment, and then aligning that work with our legal apprentices as well. So there will be some baseline similarities, but there'll be nuances within the different, depending on which division our paralegals work in. The work will be similar to that of the trainee, particularly with the introduction of the SQE route qualification. So a lot of our paralegals want to collate 2 years worth of QWE So we're making sure that 80%, at least 80% of their work is qualifying work experience, and there's room to stretch and develop as well.
It's really an option that, you know, if people are aspiring to qualifying as a solicitor or barrister in the future, but you know, these roles are hard to get. So paralegal route sounds like it's got a lot of potential for those.
Yeah, to me, and it sounds a bit sad, it feels like a really exciting time to join GLD as a paralegal.
Yeah.
Because once you're in, there's options to qualify as a legal professional, but there are going to be options to specialise as a paralegal through use of AI, as Hugh mentioned, or legal project management in the future as well. So it depends what you're interested in.
So just for the record, we're saying it's not me who went off piste, it's Hugh.
Oh, sorry.
Usually me who gets the blame. So just a couple of questions on hiring people. So people with disabilities, people from an older age group. What is your outlook towards that?
I think we have proved time and time again in GLD that we just do it. There's definitely no barriers. I genuinely mean 10% of the senior staff think they're disabled. I don't know how that measure's done, but I will try and find out. There's really not a problem. It's one of the most, which is the most inclusive workplace I've ever come across. You can genuinely, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about, when you go to get a cup of coffee, you can talk about the kids or the opera or the football, and nobody judges. It's extraordinary. It's just all viewed as interesting. And I've never had that anywhere else. I really adore the civil service, just for it. This is the common perception, I know, but genuinely for its breadth of views and diversity. And I think it's very liberating.
So you mentioned women.
Yeah.
How many women there are? And there's a specific question here about, do you believe it's harder for women to obtain jobs within the government law sector than men, especially women with children?
No, I think possibly the other way around. We certainly employ more women, and certainly in senior roles there are an awful lot of women, and in fact I find myself worrying about whether we have enough men in senior roles. Hey, what a nice problem to have. In law as a whole, that is not true. When I look back at my cohort, so I was called in 1995, particularly at the bar, a lot of them have gone off to do other things. They're all, I'm sure, happy and fulfilled and working, but they are, most of them, no longer in private practice at the bar. I felt quite fortunate to be in GLD during the years when I had very small children, because I was able to say, actually, I want to do part-time. Actually, I've just heard of this thing called a job share. Could we try that? Job sharing is the answer to nearly all problems in my experience. So even when you work full time, frankly. So love job sharing, and the GLD really embraced it and ran with it. Way before other people did. Home working, again, so I know you all know about this in the OU, but again, other firms did not leap on it with the enthusiasm that we did. So yeah, I genuinely think we are committed, partly because of what I was talking about earlier, which is that we do take people as they are. And if you want to talk about early medieval poetry, that's fine. And if you don't, that's fine too.
Thank you. That's been really helpful and interesting. So my brief says some very law-specific questions now, so I'm going to read them out. How does the government reconcile the unpublished destruction of all case records after 10 years, but the PNC retains to age 100?
Huh? This is very tech.
How does the government reconcile the unpublished destruction of all case records after 10 years, but the PNC retains to age 100?
Oh, I see. Okay. This was a big deal for me when I was a government lawyer, because so what happens is you work on your file, which in those days was a paper file, but probably isn't really now, wasn't much by the time I left. And then you send it to records, and you have to write on the front of it, you want to keep this document for X number of years or Y number of years. You did make quite a sensible assessment. Well, I tried to think about this quite seriously about how long we should be keeping it for. There were guidelines and we followed them. We were usually right. My difficulties, in fact, with retaining government documentation came less from the cases, which I thought were fine. I mean, after all, if a case had gone to court, it's public record anyway, and I felt that we didn't need to keep the case file forever. My difficulties, in fact, lay with some historic cases I did where we needed to disclose things that had belonged to the government once, and we could no longer find. In fact, rather marvellously, I did a case about Private Harry Farr, who was shot for cowardice in the First World War, and whose relations now wanted him to be pardoned. And obviously this was quite a long time after the First World War, and the papers had been bombed in the Second World War, and then further papers had been destroyed in a flood. And I mean, you know, you name it. We found some papers though, so Humphrey still lives on, and we were able to disclose some. And in fact, rather marvellously, we had a modern psychologist look at very old case files, such as they were. So I think we do keep when we can, but obviously over time things do get lost. Whether this is another role for AI and computer storage and cloud storage, I don't know. But that is a super techie question, probably relating to something specific, to which I don't know the answer without knowing the question, if you see what I mean.
So it's another one, perhaps slightly less techie. Should there be another equally funded independent body overseeing defence provision, which is not profit driven, given the starting point for every defendant is innocent until proven guilty?
No, I think the checks and balances are there, and I think the judiciary would not like the thought of another independent body. I think they would say that they were responsible for what goes on in the court system. And they run a tight ship, and they are very keen on checks and balances. So I think the system is probably quite fair. I mean, as far as we can make it. We have very strong protections built in. We have your duty as a lawyer, as both a prosecutor and a defence. So I can't emphasise how much and how important that is to the fair, you know, the wheels of justice turning fairly. As soon as the courts are involved, I have absolute faith in the independence of the judiciary and their ability to manage that fairly. I really do. And I think that the checks and balances along the way broadly work.
Thank you. And then one final question. In your opinion, does the criminal justice system stand much chance of surviving in its current form? The perception is that it is well paid and very desirable, but in fact, the pupillage is incredibly difficult to obtain and the remuneration for it is low.
Well, definitely people who do criminal work are very much valued by the legal system as a whole. They will, in the course of their career, the choices you make when you're deciding which branch of law to go into very, very much will affect your future finances, as they're getting away from that. And some areas of law are much less well paid than others. However, it goes back to motivation, partly why I think government is such an exciting place to work, because frankly, the people who are having these water cooler conversations, if you like, about football or early medieval poetry are having them because they're not motivated entirely by money. They are all people who have perfect ability to make a lot of money in the city, but have chosen not to. They've chosen to let their motivation for public service or for the rule of law or for pushing the new and exciting law forward overtake their desire to make money. Of course, they should be fairly paid, but they could, every single one of the people in my old team, which I ran, could have earned more elsewhere and within a mile or two of our office. And I know that, and they know that. But they're doing, I think, the most exciting work there is to do. And they're pushing things forward. Criminal work is, I only did it right in the early part of my career, and then I did a bit of prosecuting later as a government lawyer. But it is unbelievably rewarding getting somebody off as a defence lawyer. I remember that feeling. And if that's what floats your boat, then I would definitely go for it.
And then very specifically, how many training contracts do the government provide for law students? And are the applications submitted and considered every year or every 2 years?
No, so it's every year. Do you know how many we're on at the moment? It's not enough.
So it's every 2 year, every year, sorry, but we recruit 2 years ahead.
Yeah.
And I think we're up to about 50 for the next.
No, we're more. I hope we're more.
Oh
than
yeah,
that.
we are. Yeah,
Sorry.
it was 50 last year.
Yeah.
We're up to 80.
Sorry, I am mad keen to push this number up enormously. It is fair to say that we don't, in my view, train what we should train for the size of our profession, basically. And we should do more. We know that, and we're working on it slowly. However, there are lots of other routes in. So, and don't think that being a trainee is the only answer. And if you get knocked back from our very oversubscribed trainee program, do not think we don't like you or value you or want you either via another route or later. So look at our apprenticeship routes, look at our paralegal routes, look at our just post-qualification routes. Most of our lawyers have traditionally joined after qualification. Because we've all in the past we've had very, very few trainees and pupils. We have them too.
So we're pretty much doing good on time, I think. Nobody's yelling or screaming at me or waving hands, so we're good. So the final word from each one of you, I guess, on why people should come work for you.
You go first.
It's a elevator pitch.
So I'm fairly new to civil service. I did 4 and a bit years at CBS and 7 months in GLD, and everything that the attorney has mentioned around being an incredible place to work is true. I've worked in private firms and a variety of different jobs and never felt really settled, and I feel truly settled in the government legal department. It's a lovely place to work, surrounded by lovely people, and people are there, as the attorney said, not because the money's fine, but they're there because of public service duty, and that shows.
Yes, that's. So I would just say we do the most exciting, challenging, and important legal work there is to do.
Thank you. And that brings my section to an end. So I think, Hugh, I'm going to hand back to you.
Yeah, I think both Mark and I have got a few reflections on the discussion. So Mark, I don't know if you want to kick off or.
Okay, yeah, I'll make a few reflections. First of all, I think it is so important that you said you're a lawyer before you're a politician as Attorney General. I mean, that I think is absolutely central to your role and actually the confidence that we have in government. So that was wonderful to hear. But I think this has been a fascinating insight, and I'm sure you'll get lots of CVs, Hugh, landing on your desk very, very shortly. But I think in whatever you do, and you both have clearly demonstrated, I think it is enthusiasm which really sort of makes the difference between being a success and not being a success. And if you are enthusiastic, you will enjoy it. If you enjoy it, you will do well. So and so I think the question is, do you think that this is the right thing for you to do? And I think what you've done is given us some fantastic insights into what you do and why actually it is challenging, it's interesting, it's very, very sort of high profile, it's really, really important. And one of my old adversaries who went away to head up the Treasury Legal Department, Peter King.
Yeah.
He was great, who came out of private practice, and I think sort of wished he'd done it quite a bit earlier.
He loved it.
And he's really having, a whale of a time. So I think, that's really proof that sort of people in private practice like me sort of really should have looked at the opportunity of working in the government legal. But I also want to just touch a little bit on paralegals and the role of paralegals in the profession generally, because I think they're becoming increasingly important. In the old days, paralegals were people who, were there to do work, and they sat somewhere sort of, in the corner and were given a task and told to get on with it. But now it's quite clear, I think, from what you've said, Hugh, and actually what what I'm seeing across the whole of the legal sector, is that paralegals now a really integral part of how we deliver legal services, and really, really important to clients, whether it be the government or the client, or whether it be clients in the private sector. And I think the really exciting thing about the paralegal world is, as you've mentioned, the role of AI, the role of technology, and the and project management, which are absolutely sort of crucial to success in whatever you're doing, I think, within the legal field. And I think you get much more opportunity to be innovative and to do different things and to do things in a different way within that paralegal community than you do if you're just sort of a lawyer on the front line. So and there's a huge amount of people who don't they want to sort of take on a more straightforward role. They're going from being a qualified lawyer but to becoming a paralegal, and lots of people who are such good paralegals that they just want to qualify and go into the legal role. So there's just a huge amount of toing and froing, I think. So it's no longer that you're going to be a paralegal till you're 60. It's it really is. And I also think people coming outside of talking about Peter King coming outside of the government into the government
They're good for us.
and as we've stolen some of your talent,
Yeah.
going back into the private sector. So I do think that crossover is really helpful and really useful. But no, I'm sure you've done your cause some huge good today, and I found it sort of really fascinating. And you are the largest legal employer in the UK, and I'm sure as a result the breadth of work you talked about administrative and public law, and yes, but I mean you do everything.
We do everything.
And you've got the opportunity.
We do commercial contracts. We do as I said, lots of trade. We prosecute. We do employment law.
Yeah.
We do drafting. We do international law. They're very clever.
Yeah.
We do litigation, which I'm particularly keen on, obviously. We do a lot.
I think, to be honest, a broader range of work you get in any law firm.
Yes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we do. I'm not a good example of this, but we do very much encourage people to do different things during their careers.
Yeah. Great. Well, I mean, just a big Hugh will make the formal thank yous, but I found this really interesting and fascinating. So thanks.
Likewise, I know everyone listening online and in the room will say the same thing. And I think what I was really pleased with was the way you were so open about your decisions in terms of your own career progression. I think it's always really interesting to hear that. It's not often you hear a story where you go from medieval poetry to modern law and politics. It's great to see that. So I'm wondering whether we need to inject a bit more poetry into our
What is poetry?
But also I thought it was really interesting in terms of the way what motivated you to go into that kind of work. And you mentioned you're interested in how the law changes, the evolving nature of the law and its social context. And I think that's really the kind of approach we take to teaching law in the Open University. So I know that many people listening here will be very interested to see how they can take that kind of approach into their professional lives. And you said that you're looking for bright, enthusiastic, public service orientated students. And that, if I could give some of the students I've met at the Open University, that's how I do it. So I've got no doubt at all that we'll have other people applying in due course, and we've had success already with some of our graduates with you, and I'm really pleased that you've taken time out of your really busy schedule to come and encourage our students to follow in that path. So the warmest of thanks from the Open University Law School. It's great that you're here in our 25th anniversary year. So thank you very much for coming.